For the Mercy female teenager, the pain starts at 15 years old. By this time, she must have gotten her period, which is the sign the tribe needs to take her through the sacred rite of passage. For other tribes, this rite of passage may involve no more than dancing and singing, but for this Mercy teenager, it is much more. A huge cut is made in her lip, and herbs are added to prepare the wound for the tribe's purposes. Then, a clay plug is inserted into the wound so that it expands as it heals. This process is extremely painful. But don't worry, it is for a good cause. That cause is so the teenager can meet the minimum requirements for getting a husband. If she does not go through with this painful process, she will likely never get married, be ostracized from her society, and become an outcast. So, the choice is entirely up to her. In this video, we will explore the history of 3 extreme types of body modification and how beauty standards can become more than just standards. They can become a painful goal that destroys lives and inflicts suffering. This video contains a graphic account of some of the most extreme modifications ever performed, so viewer discretion is certainly advised. The Mercy are a Semitic ethnic group in Ethiopia. One might think that the most painful part of this tradition of theirs would be the initial cut. However, that is actually the least painful stage of the modification. After a small cut is made, a clay plug is inserted into the wound. This allows the wound to heal while widening the hole. The clay plug is then replaced periodically with larger plugs, stretching the hole wider and wider until it is big enough to accommodate a lip plate. This process can take months, and in some cases even years. The worst part of the pain is that a new plug is only inserted after the girl has already become accustomed to the pain of the previous one. In a way, the girls are like Sisyphus, rolling a boulder up a hill only to have it roll back down. There is no end to their pain until the hole is wide enough. And every time they think the pain is gone, they are given a new, larger plug, inflicting even more suffering. You might assume that these plugs are worn solely for ceremonial reasons, but that is not the case. They are worn every day by the women and are as natural as earrings or makeup. When Westerners first discovered the Mercy in the heart of Ethiopia, they had many assumptions about the purpose of this practice. Some claimed it was done to repel slave hunters and men from other tribes. The Mercy girls themselves say the practice is done purely for beauty. The size of the plate in a young girl's lip determines her bride price, the amount the groom's family pays to the bride's family before the marriage. The good news, we suppose, is that the Mercies still live in a tradition where lip discs are considered beautiful. These discs remain a symbol of attractiveness in their society and still hold significant meaning. But what happens in a society where girls are forced to undergo extreme body modifications for beauty, only for that beauty standard to change? For that, we turn to China, the land of the little feet. If you were a girl born in early 19th century China with large feet, life would be incredibly difficult. You'd struggle to find a husband, be deemed unattractive, and no one would respect you. Parents who didn't want this fate for their daughters had only one option: start binding their feet as soon as possible, often when the girls were as young as 4 or 5. The pain from this modification was excruciating, as the binding deformed not only the flesh, but also the bones. But how did people even come to believe that foot binding was the proper thing to do? There are 2 main stories behind its rise in China. The first is about Han Yuni, a favorite consort of the emperor, who was said to have dainty feet and danced so gracefully that the emperor honored her for it. However, there's little evidence that Han Yuni ever bound her feet. A more elaborate story involves another Chinese emperor, Li Yu. He constructed a 1.8-meter tall golden lotus adorned with precious stones and asked his concubine to bind her feet in white silk to resemble the shape of the lotus. She then performed a dance on the tips of her toes, and the dance was so graceful that high-born Chinese women began binding their feet too. The trend spread to the lower classes, and before long, foot binding became incredibly popular. At its peak, around 50% of Chinese women bound their feet. The process is so painful that even elderly women who had undergone foot binding as children still remember the agony. The process began when the child was young, and her foot's arch had not yet developed. Each foot was soaked in a mixture of herbs and animal blood. Then, the small toes were folded underneath the foot until they broke. Once broken, the toes were tightly pressed against the sole. The foot was straightened and the arch was forcefully broken. Bandages were then wrapped in a figure-8 pattern, starting at the instep, going over the toes, under the foot, and around the heel, pressing the broken toes into the sole. Each time the cloth was wrapped, it was tightened further, forcing the ball of the foot and the heel closer together, curling the toes under. The binding was so tight the girl couldn't move her toes, and the ends were sewn to prevent her from loosening it. This was done to girls as young as 4. The pain was so severe that many cried for days, but their parents reassured them that it was for the greater good. The practice saw a significant decline in the early 20th century, and today there are hardly any living survivors who endured this horror. For those who lived through it, the most tragic event of their lives became meaningless. Their future husbands didn't care about their small feet. Their children pitied their deformed ones, and the world remained unaware of their suffering. It's hard to imagine anything more painful than that. So what else is out there? The Mersey admire large lip discs, the Chinese adored small feet, and the Kayan? They prize elongated necks. The Kayan are a subgroup of an ethnic minority in Burma or Myanmar, and while the Kayan neck elongation tradition may not be as painful as some of the other extreme body modifications we've explored in this video, it's certainly just as unique. Starting as young as 5 years old, Kayan women wear neck rings designed to give the appearance of a longer neck. To them, it's simply about beauty and identity. Kayan women wear them because it's part of their culture and they believe it makes them look beautiful. However, anthropologists have suggested other reasons behind this tradition. Some believe the rings may have served as a deterrent to slave traders, making the women less attractive to capture. Other researchers argue that the rings highlight sexual dimorphism, as women tend to have more slender necks than men. Some even think that the practice might give women a resemblance to dragons, which are significant in Kayan mythology. A few even claim the rings may have been intended to protect against tiger bites. Although, let's be honest here, a tiger would probably just bite somewhere else. The process of elongation begins when the child is just 5 years old. Coils of brass are wrapped tightly around the girl's neck. Over time, the weight of the coils presses down on her collarbone and compresses her ribcage, giving the illusion that her neck is being stretched. As the girl grows, the coils are replaced with larger ones and they remain in place, only being removed to fit a new set. Although the process is painful at first, the discomfort fades once the brass has lowered the collarbone. Many Kayan women, even when given the option, choose to keep wearing the coils, only being open to removing them for medical examinations, as that area of the neck and collarbone often becomes bruised and discolored. Additionally, the collar feels like an integral part of the body after 10 or more years of continuous wear. In the late 2000s, some younger Kayan women stopped wearing their coils, and they reported that the discomfort only lasted for 3 days. Today, some Kayan women continue to wear the rings, but often more to attract tourists than as a cultural tradition. It seems modernity eventually comes for all traditions. Thank you for watching. In this video, we've explored the history of 3 extreme types of body modification and how the pursuit of beauty often comes with its own requirement for pain. Now, here's a question for you. Have beauty standards evolved, or are we still chasing painful ideals in new ways? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.